Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to this. Still not sure what this is, but today I'd like to talk about Isekai Quartet, a spin-off comedy series based on 4 extremely popular Isekai franchises. We have Youjo Senki, Konosuba, Overlord, and ReZero. Choice characters are picked out from each one of the shows, and they come together to form our Isekai Quartet within a high school setting. So before we get started, I'd like to preface that this will only discuss things that happen in episodes 1 through 8, as those are the only episodes available right now. Maybe some of the stuff I say here will be wrong or possibly will be right, so let's get started here. When people talk about Isekai Quartet, a lot of the time they seem to focus on the comedy of the series. They focus on the presentation, the aesthetic. Of course I'll talk about that later, but what I want to focus on first is this show canon? Is Isekai Quartet canon within the lore of Overlord, Youjo Senki, Konosuba, and ReZero? Because if it is, it could have huge ramifications for each of the shows. For example, we know Ainz is level 100, but Aqua, being only level 16, casting a level 1 turn undead, is strong enough to almost kill Ainz. So does that mean Kazuma, by extension, is around the same level as Ainz? Or does Aqua, being a goddess from another realm, increase her damage to Ainz, who is an undead? Does this mean ReZero and Konosuba, Youjo Senki, and Overlord, all these shows work off a similar magic system? So some of you right now might be saying, well, Roion, obviously this show isn't canon. Just look at it. It's a comedy spin-off series. And this is where I like to say, but this is where you're wrong, kiddo. Because Studio PuYUKAI, if they wanted to, they could pull a Pure Pallades. They could pull a ReZero after school type deal where they just ignore all of the non-canon stuff. They ignore the premise. They just set up these funny comedic situations featuring these characters. But no, Studio PuYUKAI decided to put kind of an actual backstory for why they ended up in this high school setting. For example, at the very first episode, Beatrice actually goes up to ask one of the teachers, why are we doing this high school thing? Knock it off right now. I know you from my universe. Can you stop doing this high school nonsense right now? And one of the characters uses Demiurge's mind control ability to then subjugate Beatrice. So does that mean these characters are using powers that are shared amongst all the universes? Does that mean that Tanya's universe, these characters can have the potential to use Demiurge's mind control ability? If this was just a simple comedic spin-off series, there is absolutely no reason for them to actually explain anything. There would have been no reason for them to dump in all these bits, all these scenes within episodes 1 and 2, where the characters go around asking, what are we doing here? What's going on? No. They spent a lot of time trying to explain why they're there and how this is going to play out, and if they just fulfill the daily school life requirement, they'll get sent back to their regular world. Big if true. And let's talk about the characters for a moment here. Overlord's fine. Ainz is true to who he is. He's kind of like this guy that's not really aware of what's going on, and other people kind of pick up the slack. Youjo Senki is the one that sticks out like a sore thumb, but I'll talk about that last. You have Konosuba. Yeah, it makes sense. You have ReZero. Subaru acts in character for the most part. But what I really want to hone in on is Tanya from Youjo Senki. If you've seen Youjo Senki, you know Tanya's this hardcore lolly who takes no nonsense from anyone. She actually goes ham and tortures her subordinates to make sure they can suffer through enemy interrogation for as long as possible. She's this crazy, sadistic, evil lolly who identifies as a grown-ass salaryman because that's who she was in her past life. But in Isekai Quartet, they really dumbed down her character quite a bit, as she acts very uncharacteristic of herself. For example, in episode 8, when Tanya and the lieutenant, they go to buy their swimsuit, Tanya would probably be really against that, as there's scenes where she absolutely hates wearing female clothing, as this kind of reinforces the fact that she is now a woman instead of a man now. Her whole character arc in the manga or in the light novel or in the anime is the fact that she identifies as a man, and she's going against being X, the thing that put her into this predicament. By accepting the fact that she is now a little girl and now a female, she is going against her character arc of being against being X. She is accepting being X now, which defeats the purpose of her character. But for the most part, everyone else is done tastefully, and you can see that the writers clearly enjoy the source material that they're working off of. They've thrown a lot of little hints, a lot of jokes, a lot of throwbacks at the old series, and they kind of poke fun of the isekai genre in general because of the fact that these isekai characters get themselves isekai'd into another world. I'd also like to bring up the fact that Tanya, the isekai world she lives in, is just so different from everyone else's. Hers is probably the most realistic and most grounded look at an isekai, as she goes to kind of a World War I Germany type deal. They have magic, but they are still using conventional weaponry, and the magic is really only used for maneuvering to have more interesting combat, because otherwise, if this was just regular World War I, it wouldn't make sense for a little girl to be on the front lines. They have to find some way to spice it up and put her in there. Her show is so different, not to mention the fact that her specific motivation is so different from everyone else's. She knows how she got transported, not to mention the fact that her character, who she was before she got turned into a little girl, she was a hardcore salaryman who was dead set on climbing the corporate ladder, and she actually got really far. So if you look at the main character Ainz, he's not a NEET, but he's an epic gamer, and he goes to a world where game stats matter. Konosuba's Kazuma, epic gamer NEET, gets hit by a bus, wakes up in another world, and the world is based upon levels. There's a magic system, they level up type deal. Same thing as Overlord. You look at ReZero, he wakes up in another world similar to Ainz, but he's also a NEET gamer who wakes up in a world that has kind of game mechanics, but I believe they're called holy blessings there. And Subaru kind of has this respawn mechanic, which is explained through the world's magic. Whereas Tanya's crew is mostly grounded in reality, and they stick out like sore thumbs. Look at this picture of like the classroom that they're in. All these characters look so colorful and crazy, and then you see Tanya's group where they look like just regular dudes being put in this crazy situation. It's kind of funny to see how they juxtapose everyone else's design, because Tanya's is probably the most down-to-earth and most realistic take on an isekai, but of course this is isekai, so it's going to be a little bit, okay, a lot ridiculous. But what I'm really trying to say here is, for the most part, the characters are handled very well, and if you enjoyed the source material, you're going to find that they haven't butchered really anyone, maybe except for Tanya. Alright, so let's move on to the comedy of the series. The comedy of the series is pretty much entirely based around self-referential humor. So if you haven't seen Konosuba or you haven't seen Overlord, a lot of the jokes will simply fly over your head. And yes, self-referential humor is the lowest form of humor, but that doesn't stop it from being funny. One of my favorite scenes in the show happens when Subaru has kind of a cocky attitude. The other characters just say, why do you have such a cocky attitude? It's not like you helped at all. It's because it's insinuating the fact that he died multiple times in order to make sure Emilia got to become the class president. We're following the future in which Subaru managed to make this all happen. And I love these little throwbacks to each series. It just simply makes the story so much more interesting. And the way the characters work off each other, for example, Demirge's whole idea for control really synergizes well with Tanya's crazy sadistic side. Them working together within the disciplinary committee really makes sense. There are some missed opportunities that I hope they really touch upon. There's only about 4 episodes remaining, as this show is only supposed to run to 12 episodes. I really hope they have a scene where Emilia and Megumin talk to each other, as Emilia and Megumin actually share the same voice actress, and it would be funny to have the same voice actress talk to herself. That would be a funny in-joke they could do. Another missed opportunity that maybe they could fulfill later in the future is the fact that Tanya is literally the only one out of all of them who doesn't play video games, and it'd be funny for them to kind of explain leveling up and how the magic system in their world works compares to hers. Studio PuYUKAI, I'd like to touch upon them really quickly. Studio PuYUKAI, they're known for making these short form animes. They've previously done one
for Overlord, Youjo Senki, and ReZero.
They've done these really 2-minute shorts for these 3 shows. These 2-minute shorts aired alongside their respective anime. So after you watch your episode of Overlord, after you watch your episode of ReZero, if you stayed after the credits, you'd get this short 2-minute comedic, lighthearted series. And considering how serious the stories are for Youjo Senki, Overlord, and ReZero, it makes sense for them to air kind of a comedic series alongside it to kind of lighten the mood and kind of show another side to the characters that we don't really have the time to see. For example, in Pure Pallades, we can see kind of the day-to-day goings-on at the Tomb of Nazareth. Same with Youjo Senki, we kind of see the day-to-day politics in the military camp that you don't really get to see in the anime, because the anime will be focused more on the overarching grand narrative of each respective show. Which makes sense because Konosuba is the only one that doesn't have its own comedy spin-off series, because, you know, it's already a comedy series, so I don't fault them for that. The animation, it's funny to see that this show is actually better animated than Overlord Season 2, or I'd say it has a more pleasing aesthetic than Youjo Senki does, as Youjo Senki really deviates a lot from the manga and the light novel aesthetic. They kind of give Tanya these duck lips. They kind of make them all look like Nendroid figures. Maybe that's the Cell and Nendroid market. And there's this one scene that really sticks out to me where Puck is eating an omurice in the background, and if this was Overlord Season 2, they probably would have made him CGI and have him poorly animated, or if this was Youjo Senki, they probably would have cut him completely. But I like that they actually took the time to animate this little side bit on the bottom here, and it's really well done. So I highly recommend you check it out if you enjoy these 4 properties. And the most important thing though is, if you enjoy these 4 properties, keep on the lookout, right? Keep on the lookout to see if this show is canon or not. What I think is going to happen is they're going to pull a Persona Q or Persona Q2 or Persona Dancing Moonlight, where these spin-offs are considered canon, but they do the thing where the characters fall asleep and then when they wake up, they lost all their memories of kind of the joke series that happened, so then it doesn't really matter anymore. The show is canon, and it technically happened within the lore of each universe, but it doesn't really happen as the characters don't remember what's going on. But even if they did that, even if they did the characters forgetting all that happened within Isekai Quartet, it would still have huge ramifications for the magic system of each show. Anyways, if you made this far, please hit the like and subscribe button. Tell me in the comments what you think of Isekai Quartet. Tell me if you're watching it to see if it's canon like myself, or if you're just enjoying it for what it is, a simple comedy series. I'd actually like to know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time.